I want to talk about solar power a little bit because I've experienced a really strange attitude whenever I talk about solar on my Twitter. There are a lot of people who considered solar sort of a sketchy, dubious technology that's inherently weak and useless. And this is largely the fault of purveyors of cheap, dinky, uh, sort of postcard sized solar power banks that a lot of people buy because they're cheap just to try out solar and see if it works. Those devices poison public perception of solar power much in the same way that Google Cardboard has poisoned the public perception of VR. Well, I'm here to tell you, as someone who has on many occasions relied completely on solar power for my electricity while vacationing at a cabin each summer. You can have a good experience with solar. It is real, useful power, just as real as the power that comes out of your generator. You just have to overbuy on PV, on solar surface area, to get the experience that you want. Typically, you need about 3 times as much PV as your math indicates. You need to take all of your loads. You need to basically calculate how many watts you want to consume and triple that in order to ensure that you're going to be able to cover your full load at any point throughout the year, during any season, and a wide variety of sunlight conditions. Solar is very useful if you actually quantify your needs beforehand and buy enough PV to cover your consumption. A lot of people don't do that. It's not magic. You can't just plug anything into a panel of any size and have it charge just as quickly as it would from a wall outlet. You can get full speed charging, but you have to actually sit down and do the napkin math. For example, in order to charge your cell phone at level 1 charging speed, that's not fast charging, that's not quick charge 2 or 3.0, level 1 charging speed, I guess you can charge using as little as 500 milliamps, but to charge at the speed that you're normally used to from the little adapter that comes with your phone, that's about 10 watts. That's 5 volts, which is USB standard, at 2.1 amps, which comes out to a little bit over 10. It's like 10.2 watts. Most of the little solar chargers are 1 watt. Those little pieces of crap from Alibaba. Even a lot of the better, larger panels you can buy are 5 watts or 7 watts. You need at least 10 watts, and the rating you see when you buy the panel is peak output. That's assuming it's very strong direct sunlight. So again, you want about 3 times, ideally you want about 30 watts, but the largest solar panels currently on backpacks, like that one, that's a 3-panel array, are about 10 watts. And it may surprise you to learn, you can have a solar backpack with the 10 watt array on it for as little as $60. I'll put that link on the screen now. I'm probably going to do it through my Amazon storefront so I get a little something from it. It's the best value I've found. The next level up from that would be suitcase batteries and the folding solar arrays that typically come with them. That's about what you'll need to reliably power, say, a laptop off-grid. That backpack can supposedly power a laptop. 10 watts can't cover what it consumes while it's running. That's like 90 watts. But it can charge it. In order to power a laptop while it's running, you need a considerably large amount of energy. I have a Jackery 500 with a 92 watt, no, actually 102 watt folding array, but again, that's peak output. It can cover my largest single load, giggity, which is the laptop, and everything under that. It's overkill for anything like a smartphone or a tablet. But that was in 2017, and this whole field advances very quickly. Now Jackery has a 1 kilowatt hour battery, which is about as much energy as is in that e-bike, which will carry it for about 50 miles on flat ground going at a decent speed, or as little as 30 if I really gun it. It's quite a lot of energy, but other companies such as Bluetti make suitcase batteries as high capacity as 2.4 kilowatt hours, which is really quite nuts. Those are LiPo cells though, so you're playing with fire. Price for that 500 watt hour Jackery was $600 in 2017. I think it's like $400 now. You can get the 1 kilowatt hour unit for $800 or $900. The 2.4 kilowatt hour unit is $1,800. So you pay a pretty penny, but then if you pair it with solar panels, you have to consider the value proposition of having a secure, guaranteed source of continuous power for even very large, power-hungry loads, sitting in your closet, ready to be used whenever. That's going to be good for at least a decade, or however long the cells last. If you're curious, the next level up from that, for people with deeper pockets, would be something like a Tesla Powerwall. And speaking as someone who's investigated the price of putting together my own 18650 based power pack for a house, the prices come out pretty close to the same. Tesla has done an incredible job of keeping the cost of the Powerwall down. It's not overpriced like you'd imagine it would be, in part because they're made from aftermarket, slightly degraded Model S battery packs. They can really sell them for an extremely competitive price that makes building your own kind of a waste of time, in my opinion. So the options are out there, and a great deal of progress has been made. Back in the 1970s, if you would have argued that solar panels were a useless trinket for virtue signaling celebrities, you would have been right, because the efficiency was not yet even to 15%. A lot of people shook their fists at Reagan for tearing down those solar panels from the White House that Jimmy Carter put up, but he wasn't exactly wrong to do it. Part of that was his involvement with fossil fuel companies, but at the same time, that was a waste of materials, some of them toxic. However, modern panels are 23% efficient, and that may not seem like a significant difference, but it really is. Once you pass that 20% threshold, many formerly unthinkable things become possible, up to and including solar-powered electric cars, such as the Lightyear 1, which cannot run any faster than, say, 30 miles per hour totally under solar power. It can travel at faster speeds. It has to draw on the battery to do so, but at 30 miles an hour on flat ground on a sunny day, it can just about totally power itself from the PV. And that's amazing. And even traveling at higher speeds, if there's good sunlight, the 50 kilowatt hour battery, which would normally give it a range of less than 200 miles, instead gives it a range of over 400, just to give you an idea of how much those solar panels really contribute. As for what the future holds, the Shockley-Queisser limit, which is the theoretical maximum efficiency of photovoltaics, once thought to be about 30%, better data has more recently increased that to 33.7%, represents kind of the maximum of what we can expect. If we get anywhere close to 30, absolutely crazy things become possible. Stuff like solar passenger airplanes are suddenly on the table. So that's why I'm bullish on solar. It used to suck, it really doesn't now. It has become cheaper than it ever has been. This is why I'm going with pure solar power for this cooling jacket project. This is why I've invested so much personally in solar. It's not one of those greenwashing fad technologies like CFLs. Remember CFLs? That was a fad. That was greenwashing. Solar panels have been here a long time. They've stood the test of time. They've gotten better and better. They're everywhere now. They're a proven technology. So if you were dubious and unsure about solar because you've never personally relied on it, or you've had a bad experience with a cheap device, just rest assured, it really works. It can really deliver on the promise. You just have to buy a lot of it. Having said all that, I'm now going to appear to contradict myself when I say that photovoltaics are probably the worst off-grid power solution when you compare it to things like, say, geothermal or microhydro. But those are ideal. Those are, the best of all possible worlds scenarios, which are very location dependent. You have to have land if you're going to use microhydro that has an elevation change and running water on it. Otherwise, it's just a non-starter. And also, obviously, geothermal is very location dependent, which solar isn't, or at least to a much smaller degree. You can use solar anywhere there's sunshine during the day, and it doesn't have to be perfect quality sunshine. Even at relatively far northern latitudes, the sunlight is still of sufficiently high quality for solar panels because they're optimized for infrared, which for the most part does a pretty good job at penetrating cloud cover. The reason I'm still so horny for solar, despite all these shortcomings, is because it's portable. It's the only one that's portable. There's no such thing as portable geothermal power. There's kind of such a thing as portable hydroelectric power. There's this like $1,200 river turbine, but it can only work if it's fully immersed in the water, which introduces all kinds of wear and tear, very high maintenance. Whereas a fixed hydroelectric installation, like a microhydro power tap, like a Turgo turbine, can keep all of the electronic stuff and up out of the water, greatly reducing the maintenance required. You can't. It's technically possible, but not really practical. Portable solar is practical. You can carry enough on your person to produce a useful amount of power, and that's kind of magical. I mean, if you told somebody during the Industrial Revolution that someone in the future was going to invent something, a machine, small enough you could pick up and carry it, that can turn sunshine into usable energy, they would have laughed you out of the room before resuming subsistence farming or dying of syphilis or whatever. Something else I want to talk about while I'm out here, not for too long, because unbelievably, even at 7 p.m., it's pretty warm. I talked about this a little bit on Twitter, but I want to reach my YouTube audience with it too. If there was one concept that I could inject into the public consciousness using my platform, meager though it might be, it would be the distinction between wholesome technologies and degenerate technologies. Popularizing the understanding of this distinction, I feel, is critical for shaping the future because it informs what we buy and how we vote. Wholesome technologies as a category, as an umbrella group, is kind of an ideal. It includes qualities like being simple, very few moving parts, none if possible. Ideally, it should be solid state, which is why I have such a hard-on for semiconductor-based devices. It should therefore be user serviceable. It should be easy to maintain, easy to repair. It shouldn't use any proprietary consumables that you're locked into having to buy like on a recurring basis. It should be made with universal standards in mind. It should be future-proofed. It should not be an example of planned obsolescence. It should be clean, obviously. It shouldn't emit any pollutants that are going to poison you or your family. By contrast, degenerate technologies typically emit a lot of pollutants. They are plastic junk that's going to break quickly. They're not built to last. Like Kickstarter shit, like the Juicero. Remember the Juicero? They do something you don't really need. They use proprietary standards, so you have to buy everything from that company, and they assume they're always going to exist. And if they go out of business, then all your shit's useless, and you can't get any support for servicing it. It's non-user serviceable, like Apple products. You can't get inside of it to effect repairs. Basically, everything about degenerate technology is anti-consumer. It's designed to be incomprehensible, so you can't fix it on your own. It's designed to thwart your every attempt at self-sufficiency. It's designed to lock you into recurring purchases, and they don't really care if it emits things into the air that get into your lungs that stunt your children's growth or give them cancer. I sense a growing awareness of this issue. I don't think it's really crystallized into a household term yet, but people seem to generally get that their decisions matter when they buy things, and their decisions matter when they vote. It matters what direction our technological development takes. I envision a solid state future, or very close to it, a future where technology is at least superficially simple, instead of being this Victorian contraption that emits huge plumes of smoke and it has gears and pistons and chains and belts. It's just a quiet, unassuming box that sits in the corner with maybe a blinking light emitting nothing more than a soft hum. A silent, powerful genie carrying out whatever task you have assigned to it. I imagine technologies which share the quality of alien artifacts from science fiction in that they are so durable and with such energy density that they can sit unused for centuries, be rediscovered, and power right up as though they're brand new. I envision the ability to comfortably live in a dignified way without sacrificing much or any in the way of modern amenities anywhere on the globe that you choose. Making all of your own electricity, purifying your own water, growing your own food, home manufacturing, not just 3D printing, but also lithography as well of all your own custom consumer devices. Being able to telecommute by VR and thereby avoiding a lot of unnecessary travel, but when you want to travel, being able to do so with unprecedented freedom by way of electric personal VTOLs, which are in development now. There's over 100 companies working on electric manned quadrotors that you can sit in and ride and generally fly themselves. These will be standard features of 3D printed homes, which, because they are 3D printed by a robot arm, there's 2 companies that I know of doing this now, will at least potentially be dramatically cheaper than existing housing if they choose to pass that savings on to the consumer rather than pocketing it, which in large part will determine whether or not I categorize them as a degenerate or wholesome technology. I feel this message is important because while the Earth and humanity is a mixture of good and bad, that generally averages out to neutral, what I like to call the rule of boring, the media amplifies and magnifies the bad so much that we typically don't even see the good stuff. A lot of these cool developments are stuff that I share with people, and they're shocked that it exists. They're shocked that solar is as cheap as it is. They're shocked that batteries are as good as they are. There are trends for the worse that we have to work against, but there are other trends working for the better at the same time that just don't get the same kind of airtime. For example, income inequality is increasing, but at the same time, shit's getting cheaper because of automated production, because of all these improved, streamlined technologies. Many of the unfortunate necessities of modern life that make it expensive, like constant travel, are becoming unnecessary by way of technologies like VR telecommuting and telerobotics, which saves that money that we can then spend on other things. Automation is eliminating jobs, but we're also bringing it home in the form of home robotics and 3D printing, the ability to manufacture our own goods in the home using whatever custom design somebody has uploaded to the internet. The gist of this message, if you didn't want to watch the whole thing and scrubbed all the way to the end, which I don't blame you, is that a good future is still possible in spite of everything, because even with all these processes going on that are making the world worse, there are other processes working against it, making the world better at the same time. A bright future is still possible. It's always going to be a mixture of chocolate ice cream and dog turds. You know, it's always going to be good and bad, but we can skew that towards the good. We can achieve the kind of future that you and I would love to inhabit. It's still possible to do that. It just depends on our choices now. I mean, no matter what we do, the future is coming. The only thing that we can control is whether or not we choose to be ready for it. And that will in turn decide what sort of future we get. Just as a final note, and I want to add, everything I've talked about so far was foretold decades ago. Have a look at this. And this. And this. That's the funny thing about futurism. Futurists are always right about what will eventually become possible when they base their predictions on solid physics. Even if they're always wrong about what it will look like.